So I'm Nikhil Trivedi. I'm a web architect at the Art Institute of Chicago, and welcome to What is a Data Hub? Before I begin, I just wanted to recognize that my museum is situated on what is recognized today as the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, the Odawa, and the Potawatomi peoples. Chicago is the third largest urban native population in the country with over 100 tribal nations represented. And I literally wouldn't be standing here talking to you if it wasn't for my institution benefiting from sitting on that land. So I just want to name that before we begin. A lot changes in 10 years. The last time we embarked on a major web redesign in 2007, the first iPhone had just been released. YouTube was in its infancy. Friendster was the place to be. And Facebook hadn't released a native app yet, if you can imagine using Facebook without one. In fact, the Facebook phone, if anyone remembers what that was, yeah, that hadn't been released yet. By the time we began work on the new website that we relaunched last year, so much had changed in user experience and expectations and behavior that suffice it to say our website was in dire need of an overhaul. As our conception of the redesign project grew from just redoing our collections to taking stock of our entire web presence, it became clear that what was needed was more than just a visual refresh. A number of disparate systems had popped up over the previous 10 years, all serving rich, meaningful content to the web and to the public. We needed to take this opportunity to unify all of our content on the back end or risk another 10 years of even more new systems, spreading our digital footprint even further astray. I joined the experience design team about a year before the redesign began with a vision. Create a central data repository for all of our public content that can feed our website, our mobile apps, in-gallery interactives, an eventual public API, and anything else we might dream up in the future. I wanted us to collect all of our public data into one place, serve it all up through a uniform API, and make the content collected from all of our platforms searchable in one place. I'm not sure my colleagues knew entirely what we were about to embark on, but I had been at the organization for over 10 years at the time, and I knew enough about all these systems to know what interesting data existed in them. And most importantly, my colleagues trusted me to take the reins and to run. After about a year's worth of work, we built a data hub. Today, I'll share with you our strategy and philosophy, how the project aligns with our organization's mission, some of our shortcomings, and what we plan for in the future. First, strategy and philosophy. As an organization, we publish a lot of content to the web. Artworks, catalogs, publications, shop products, events, mobile tours, microsites, articles, press releases, and on and on and on. Many of these are distributed through their own software stacks, collection management systems, digital asset management systems, customer relation management systems, e-commerce systems, websites, CMSs, library systems. It doesn't make sense to try to create a single system to serve all the needs that each of these fill. But it does make sense to try to unify the publishing process across all these platforms. Take our new website, for instance, needing information from about 8 different systems. We could have wrote a bunch of custom code in our website to integrate with each of these systems. Since a partner design and development firm did all the initial work, that would have meant we would have paid them to write 8 custom integrations that likely couldn't have been used anywhere else. I knew it wouldn't have been long before our mobile apps would need the same functionality and would have to write custom integrations with at least some of these systems. Follow that with in-gallery apps, our sales and ticketing site, and other amazing apps we haven't written yet. And eventually you have a convoluted mess that was spearheaded by our website project. No, just please, no. So instead, we built a data hub that acts as an intermediary. It handles all these integrations so each consuming system, the website, mobile apps, and in-gallery interactives, don't have to. Instead, each system only has to figure out how to talk to one system, and they can get everything they need. If they figure out how to get artwork data, then because our API is completely uniform, they already know how to get shop products, events, exhibitions, artists, and so forth. It continues to save a ton of developer time among staff and also with partner agencies whose jobs are making a lot easier. It's worth noting here the breadth of data that's available in our data hub. Metadata on over 100,000 artworks from our collection is available in the API, including relationships to resources like artists, terms, and exhibitions. We have information on every exhibition we've hosted in our 140-year history in our data hub. 1,000 products from our shop. Why shop products? Why not shop products? We see no harm in including them, and we haven't really heard a compelling reason not to. We have information on 20 years worth of microsites that we archived as part of this project with relationships to artworks, artists, and exhibitions for each of them, blog articles going back 10 years, full publication texts. We're providing data that's never been available before, and cross-system relationships that have never existed. It's also worth noting that from the get-go, we focus solely on public information, data that can already be found on the web in some way. Our vision was for the Data Hub to eventually act as our museum's public API, and each step of the way, we reinforced with internal staff that we're only focused on public data. So by the time we were ready to launch our API, there were very few questions about the sensitivity of data. Within the Data Hub, we wanted to make the integrations with each system as easy and sustainable as possible. Systems might get swapped out with newer, shinier ones, and we wanted to make the work of switching as easy as possible. To manage this, we wrote small little microservices that sit on top of each system that collects and queries the source system and provides data to the Data Hub in a predictable way. Each of our source systems provide data in different ways, so these microservices are where the integration complexities lie. Some have APIs of their own that are easy to work with. Others, we had to rely on periodic CSV exports, and for some, we had to write scripts that scrape pages within the application. Regardless of how it happens, with these microservices in place, each system the Data Hub talks to provides its data in a uniform way, so the Data Hub import processes become easier and less complex. The benefit of this approach was demonstrated when we recently changed where we get our collections data. We used to get all our collections metadata from our digital asset management system. I know. It meant data had to go from our CMS through a number of layers of our dams to the Data Hub until it finally made it to the website. In some cases, this process could take more than 24 hours. So earlier this year, our collections development team decided to provide its own API to simplify their systems. We gave them the specifications of how we built each of our microservices. They built their API, and then we changed our microservice to pivot to their new API, leaving the structure of the data that the Data Hub provided to the website and mobile apps completely intact. We made a fundamental change to our internal systems, and our website and mobile apps barely blinked. What used to take more than a day now took about 5 minutes. Internal staff were ecstatic, and our collections development team was excited to get in on the action too. They had concrete specs with clear outcomes of success. All that having been said, we've been able to do some pretty cool things with our Data Hub. We programmatically analyzed every image in our collection to determine their dominant color and released a search by color on our website earlier this year. In the last few months, we launched a browser extension to the Chrome Web Store that, when installed, shows you a randomly selected public domain artwork from our collection each time you open a new tab. And we just made available a command line script that displays artworks in your terminal window using only text characters. We're having a lot of fun. So moving on to how this work aligns with our mission. In the years before our redesign, we also saw a marked shift in how we as a society consume information. When our museum was founded 140 years ago, good information wasn't that easy to find. Museums served as important incubators for presenting historic information, both broad and in narrow slices. While we know that museums are not neutral, as a sector, it was objectivity that most defined our brands. Museums were the socially agreed upon solution to an information gap that defined many of our institutions. Fast forward to today, where you can find almost anything you want on the first page of a Google search result. Information from a variety of perspectives is easier to access than it ever has been. So what then do we do with museums? What purpose do we serve? What social problem do our institutions solve? I don't really know yet, and if there's no longer a great answer to the question, it's arguable whether museums should actually exist at all. But we can take our time with that one. What I do know is that social value for institutions like ours is more and more being driven by transparency than by objectivity. My organization's mission statement calls for us to, quote, collect, preserve, and interpret works of art of the highest quality for the inspiration and education of the public in accordance with our profession's highest ethical standards and practices. In today's world, transparency is arguably one of the highest ethical standards that we could reach for in our sector. As large companies position themselves to know a whole lot about us as people and have always been opaque with what exactly they know and what they do with, as we learned in the Ignite talks on Tuesday, being radically transparent with our data reestablishes our authority in a new context and creates new doors through which visitors can enter our institutions and find themselves here. This kind of work can also act as a model for other parts of our organizations, making concrete use cases we can look at to show that it's low risk and actually beneficial for us to be more transparent than less. I think of transparency and openness at the Art Institute under three main categories. Open images. We currently offer over 50,000 images on our website for download under a public domain CC0 license, and the number's growing. Open source. Most of the code we develop is available to the public on GitHub, including all of the Data Hub code, our mobile apps, and in-gallery interactives. It's unusual for large organizations outside the museum sector as well as within to open source entire applications. Most of what you see from large organizations are tools and components, but we've open sourced our entire mobile apps, our entire Journey Maker app, which is an in-gallery interactive that lets playful visitors create their own tours through our galleries. And we're working towards open sourcing our whole website. And then finally, open data. Yesterday, we made our Data Hub API open to the public. There's no registration required, and there's a good amount of documentation orienting you to what's available. And remember, this isn't just a collections API. This is an API of all of our museum's public data. So if you figure out how to parse through our artworks, then you already know how to get exhibitions, artists, events, articles, shop products, publications, and so much more. I don't think we can put to words how squealish we are with excitement about this soft launch. Coming back to transparency, we also have ongoing discussions about our boost algorithms. Across our website, we currently boost works based on historic popularity, relying on website analytics going back 10 years, current popularity going back 3 months, and institutional priority. Our museum has been around for 140 years in a white supremacy culture, so it might come as no surprise that our most popular works are by white men. Our analytics show that presently, most people are still searching for works by white men. So considering this within our boost algorithm, do we lift up works by women and people of color to give them more visibility? Or do we develop a content strategy across the organization to write and publish more content about these artists to push a culture shift of what people are looking for and let our algorithm automatically adjust? We're still thinking and tweaking and thinking and tweaking. Moving on to shortcomings. Having lived in this data hub for over a year, we learned a bit more about what we built and what it means for us. It's pretty complex. Between the microservices, the import processes, the presentation of the API endpoints, automatically generated documentation that generates with each deploy, the search service, and the network infrastructure, there's a lot of moving pieces that we have to keep in our brains at the same time. When we're in a Data Hub sprint, it makes working in it really easy because areas of responsibility are clearly separated. But if we take a break to work on something else for a few months, there's a bit of ramping up time before it can really dive back in again. Because of this, we organize our sprints to cluster work in one area at a time. If something is brought to us that's pressing, we'll hold off until we have a few more tasks to fill out a sprint and then do all the work together. Luckily, by simply communicating and setting expectations, staff have been on board with this approach since we're also generally pretty reliable when we say something will get done. Because the Data Hub is the last point of data before it goes out to other systems, it's also set us up to be the first responders when things go wrong. The exercise of building the Data Hub has set up our team to really be the only team across the organization that has a holistic view of all of our systems, which is great. But it also means we're the only team with a holistic view of all of our systems. So we use as many points of collaboration as we can as learning opportunities to share what we've learned with our peers. And we're working on building a more sustainable dashboard for our API as well, so staff across the organization can peek into our data themselves. Performance of our outbound API is also part of our ongoing work. Because the Data Hub serves so many of our public-facing systems, if the Data Hub is slow, everything is slow. So we're constantly evaluating, tweaking, and responding. Moving on to the future. Over this past year, we plan to invest in using the Data Hub as a relationship building opportunity with folks across the city. I came to museums as a person who didn't grow up with a fondness of museums and never really expected to see myself in them. I'm hoping our public API can act as a surprising door of entry for folks who might have similar experiences and provide opportunities for collaboration that we may not expect. Like when a person outside of our organization, outside of our circle of people that we're connected with, built a Twitter bot that tweets a randomly selected artwork from our collection every 6 hours. It's an AIC bot, someone we don't even know. It just sort of happened. He was initially scraping our website with random numbers, hoping to find a match to an artwork. We instead steered him towards querying our API for a randomly selected work of art in one go. As word about the Data Hub gets out across the organization, we're also exploring new data that we can include and new relationships that we can build across systems, like scraping old documents for accession numbers and creating historic archives with disparate content that might exist across systems. All in all, over this next year, just like this past year, we plan to work hella hard and have a whole lot of fun at the same time. Thanks. So we've got about 10 minutes for questions. Yeah.
I was just wondering, I didn't see programs on the list of data that you're incorporating. I know at my museum, the programs folks are really interested in seeing, for example, how if they're having an upcoming event about something that relates to collections objects, could they kind of like showcase collections objects, and then I had the thought if we had our collections pages also display related programs, if it's like a food history object or a history museum, you could go to a food history event, upcoming, that kind of thing. I was wondering if you've thought about that at all, and if this would provide any kind of a model for doing something with, event data.
Yeah, event data is currently managed in our website. Our website is one of the systems that gets pulled into the Data Hub. So within our website, the Data Hub allows event pages to be related to things like artworks and other things that are in the Data Hub. So those two-way relationships are possible. So events are sort of part of this whole thing.
Through the website,
yeah,
part of the data that goes in.
Yeah, the website is like the main place where events are currently managed.
And is that like a Drupal or something like that? And I guess I'm having trouble understanding like what this Data Hub technically exactly is?
Yeah. The website was built in Laravel. It's a PHP-based framework for web applications. I guess the 8th box up here is the website.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for this. As a developer, this is probably the most beautiful thing I've seen all week.
Thanks.
This is incredibly exciting. My main question to you is, how did you sell it? Like, how did you get everybody on board?
Yeah.
Make this all possible. This seems like a fantasy to me.
Yeah. So I had been at the museum for 11 years before I moved into the department that was about to embark on the website redesign project. They were hiring for a developer to take over the website once it was done. So this wasn't part of their plan initially. So in my cover letter with my resume, I pitched the Data Hub. And because I had been there for 10 years and I came with all this institutional knowledge about all these other systems and how we could really make the process of building the website easier, because that was what we were about to embark on. In the Gorilla sessions, they talk about Trojan horsing, right? So we were about to build this website, and I was coming saying we can make this project way easier if we pull all this data that we want to bring in to one place. Global search was a thing they wanted in the website. They wanted the ability to search across all these systems. This is how we're going to do it. So I sort of took this thing that was already sort of moving, probably had this idea in my head for a few years by that point, presented it in a way that it was kind of a no-brainer. And then, with the relationship that I had with people that I was going to be working with, they trusted me to know what I was doing and to do it well. So we just went. Yeah, thanks.
So I'm not that techie, but can you name some software and what the Data Hub is and the languages?
Yeah.
And part 2 is digital preservation and how you're dealing with that if everything's feeding into one thing.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing, the Data Hub is a PHP application built in Laravel. We chose to do it in Laravel because by that point we knew the website was gonna be built in Laravel. So our internal team used this also as a way to prepare ourselves for getting acquainted with a new code base. The digital preservation side of things. So we think of data in the Data Hub as being volatile. So at any time, the Data Hub should be able to be completely wiped out and everything can be re-imported from the source systems in the Data Hub, and it'll be just the same. So the Data Hub itself doesn't maintain data. It's just really a reasonable copy of data that's maintained by other systems, by other people who have responsibility in those systems.
What about the relationships that you're making?
The relationships, we have processes that, in cases where we can write scripts basically that audit data and determine those relationships programmatically, we'll just rerun those processes. In other cases, we try to work with this source systems to try to have them use the Data Hub to build relationships within those systems so that we could just pull it down from there.
Awesome job.
Thanks.
Do you have to be responsible for monitoring of the APIs or the connections to the source systems? If one of those breaks, is that going to immediately be impacting your downstream solutions, or is that part of it a little more resilient?
Yeah, it is our responsibility to monitor the connection between the Data Hub and the source systems. If the connection breaks, then the impact will be that we just won't get updates, right? Because we're copying full data from the source systems, and the Data Hub has all the data it needs to serve out to the downstream systems.
So then you just go back to the 24-hour refresh.
Right. Yeah. Or work with the source system to get fixed, and then, the next time an import succeeds, it'll just go back to the last successful import, and it'll just catch up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love this whole concept. My question is, what about the sensitive data or images that do have restrictions? I mean, do you still need to do systems still need to talk to each other for that content? Because I know you said the hub only has public
Mhm.
data, so how does that information go from system to system?
So internal data, the internal systems can't really rely on the data hub for sensitive internal data. There's been another system within our organization called a data warehouse that sort of collapses internal data from systems for the purpose of reporting. And at some point that might be a place where systems could pull internal data out from. I'm not sure that that team is conceptualizing their project in that way. But for the purposes of public data, that's sort of the agreement we have with our source systems. And there's a good amount of data that's in there. So like if the collections data is a big chunk of what's in there. If a source system wants to build relationships or identify existing relationships that are in the data hub with public data, they can. But internal data, it's not really part of what we've agreed upon. Was there a second part to your question?
No, it's just, I was just wondering if there had to be another type of integration in order to handle.
You asked about images too, and licensing of images.
Yeah.
So I should say that the data hub itself only has metadata. Like you can't get image files from the data hub. You can get URLs to an image, and we provide like copyright information with image URLs we provide. But yeah, it's sort of up to the consuming users to honor those copyright restrictions. We also, though, have licensing information of the metadata we provide. So for each query that you make to the data hub, there'll be licensing text saying whether this particular response is CC0 or all rights reserved or something in between. Because each of these source systems, the data came from different places. So we tried to CC0 as much as we can, but we couldn't do it across the board. So each response makes it clear what actually you can do with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great model, thank you. I have 21 apps with siloed information that I'd love to disassemble and release again to the world in various formats. So you mentioned you have apps. Did you encounter apps that you had to do that with that had siloed information that you had to bring back into one of these data centers, and how did you do that?
So we didn't really, this project, its aim was to disturb the source system as little as possible. So we do have mobile apps. They're guided tour, in-gallery tours. So we pull in that tour information about the stops, descriptions, and everything. So data about all those tours is all in the data hub, and the website uses that to embed tour audio into the website and things like that. But basically, like, we left the mobile apps to do what they do, and pulled in information about them so that the data can be used in other ways.
So it's a pointer, and you have some files, like audio files that are pulled in.
Pointers to the files in that system.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You might be out of time, I don't know if I'm rushing this, but for all the consumers of your data, meaning in-house websites, the mobile app, and in-gallery experiences, are you doing that dev work in-house? Are you working with outside contractors? And if so, how do they feel about your data hub?
So the question was, the mobile apps, the website, the in-gallery interactives, are those all built in-house, or are they built with partner agencies? And if they're built with partner agencies, how do they feel about the data hub? It's a mixed bag. The website was initially developed by a partner. Over the past year, we've taken over development completely in-house. Our mobile apps, we've got a little bit of expertise in-house, but a lot of major work happens with our partners, likewise with some of our in-gallery interactives. Our partners have generally been really happy that they don't have to figure out how to talk to old archaic systems, and many of them to figure out how to get what they need. Like I said, a lot of these systems either have to rely on CSV exports, and it's complicated. But if we can give them just one REST API, they know how to work with JSON, they know how to work with REST API. We can give them specific queries to tell them how to how to do the thing that they're being asked to do by our organization in this one part. We give them specific queries to just inject in this part of the work that they're doing, and they don't even have to like think about using the API. So they've liked it.
It's great to hear. It does make sense from a development standpoint. In our experience, sometimes they want to sell you on something else. So.
Yeah. So we are out of time. Thank you so much.